Hi, fellow budding photographers. Welcome back. Today, I want to walk you through some of the challenges and learning and cool things I figured out while making this picture. So, the first thing was I'm working with natural lighting just coming through the window, and it was pretty bright. So, I had to do the whole frosted shower curtain thing, like I talked about in that previous video, and it was still super bright. And look at my setup. Maybe you know why it's still too bright. Here's what the images I first took looked like. Mm, 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 mm. Not what I was going for. Kind of blown out, too bright. I wanted like a fairy fantasy, soft, glowy. That wasn't it. So, after about a million of these not so great shots, I took a look at the setup and I went, okay, it's too bright. It's just too bright. Even with the shower curtain, I tried doubling the shower curtain, still too bright. Quick tip. Maybe you've struggled with this too. Maybe you want to try doing a similar shot yourself. Let me save you the trouble. Turn your table. Turn it 45-ish. Do not get out a protractor. I'm not a math person. I didn't get out a protractor. Turn it though. Turn it angled to the window. So this was my successful setup. And oh my goodness. So that was one major key thing. This is what it looked like at that point. Better, less blown out. But I still wanted it muted. I wanted it softer, more ethereal, if you will. And I learned something. So typically, especially when we're beginning, we're told, oh, just keep your white balance on auto. And probably 99.995% of the time, that's exactly the right method to take because most of the time, modern cameras do a great job of figuring out the white balance. In this particular shot, though, I was going for a very specific experience with the lighting that I couldn't create in reality. So here's the trick. Go into your camera, find your white balance settings and change it to incandescent, or it might be called tungsten, depending on what brand of camera you have. Again, I shoot Nikon, mine said incandescent. And then you'll see some numbers on those settings. And this really confused me too. So it starts at 0, and that's basically just, okay, make it a little different. If you can go up, the plus numbers make it bluer. The lower numbers make it sort of more magenta toned. So if you're trying to create a scene with a particular feel, like mine, I was going for more like ethereal, moonlight. So I went to the blue end. But if it wanted to be more like sunrise or middle of the day type of a feeling, maybe you go more towards the magenta side. Huge, huge difference. So this is now the shot that I worked with. This was much closer to what I was looking for, but it still wasn't quite a fairyland, right? It's a cute picture. I'm pretty proud of it. Obviously needs some cleaning up. There's some stuff in the background and okay, fine. I know how to do that in post-processing. If you don't, just go to YouTube and search how do I erase something in whatever software it is that you use. If you don't use software, I use Photopea. I highly recommend it. It is completely free. Completely free. Yeah, okay, there's an ad. And every once in a while you get a little pop-up that says, did you know for X amount of money you can support us? Just close it. You can do all the things. Some of the things it'll say, this is a premium feature, you need to watch an ad. And you just say fine and you watch, put on the ad and walk away. Whatever. But it's free and it works just like Photoshop pretty much. So I highly recommend that, especially for those of us who are photographers on a budget. So with that, I then took it into my post-processing software and I learned a lot about things that I could do there that I didn't know. I knew basic stuff. I knew how to delete that little bracket from the shelf and clean things up like that. I know how to do like black and white and change the tones, but yeah, something what I was trying to do, not so much. So I actually went to AI and I said, I'm trying to create this feeling in Photopea. What do I need to do? And it spat out some step-by-step instructions. And again, I'm not going to walk you through each of those steps because it's going to be different depending on what software you use. The point is you now know how to find out how to do it in whatever software you use. What I learned though was more about how to use layers and things like Gaussian blur, which I'd only seen and not heard of, to create those little sparks that you see, the little fairy dust, and how to change kind of the feeling and the lighting and this and that. And it wound up being this photo that I am so immensely proud of. And I brought it to my still life class the last night of class, and everyone was like, whoa. Now, is this a traditional still life? Nope. And here's why. It's a scene, right? As you can see, I've got layers. I've got a foreground that's kind of blurred out. I've got a middle ground, the fairy that is completely in focus, and then the tree in the background that's also blurred. Now, here was another thing I learned in the setup. And this might get you too, especially if you're like me and you're new and the f-stop thing is super confusing. Now remember, like I said in the last video, what I learned from Chris Bray Photography was, yes, okay, it's a fraction and technically the number is doing the opposite of what you think on the inside of the camera. And that's how people typically talk about it. They'll say, make your f-stop, they'll say, shut down your exposure, close your exposure. And what they're really saying is make the number you see on your camera bigger. Confusing, breaks my brain. So what I will tell you is this. I had my f-stop somewhere between a 4.5 and a 5, which you would think, maybe not, because what I learned again from Chris Bray was the more F's, the bigger that number you see on your camera, the more of the scene is in focus. The smaller that number, the smaller amount of the scene is in focus. And that's true. However, it also somewhat depends on your zoom and your lens and all of that. So you need to play around with it a little bit, but that is a really good place to start, is just to understand that bigger number, more in focus, smaller number, less in focus. So initially I was thinking, oh, so this should be like a 2 or a 3. No, because I'm not shooting with macro and I wanted it to be the middle that was in focus. So it needed to be like a 4.5 that kind of got me focused into that middle. Foreground, slightly blurred. Background, slightly blurred. So once I had all of that set up and I figured out the lighting and I brought it into Photopea, that's what I got. Like I said, super proud of it. And I was thrilled with the response from my still life class. No, it wasn't a traditional still life, yet everyone there was like, wow, how did you do this? Or, wow, you've only been doing photography since April, less than a year? Yeah, because I sat down and I took the time to learn. And if nothing else, I want you to take that away from this video. Whether you want to make a photo like this one or not, what I want you to most take away from anything on this channel is, if you are willing to put in the time to learn, you can do it. You can do any scene you want, any photography style you want. You don't have to photograph like me. This is my style. You don't even have to like my style. You can make your own photos and be good at it if you're willing to put in the time and to teach yourself a little bit, to figure stuff out. So let's talk about the costs and stuff for a minute here, because again, photographers on a budget. So the shower curtain, like we talked about last time, $5 or whatever, super cheap solution. I literally hung it up with thumbtacks and tape because that's what I had on hand. The fairy, the stones in the foreground, and the tree, all stuff I had. The moss, I borrowed. The table, I had. So far we're at $5. And that shower curtain isn't just for this shot, so that almost doesn't even count. And then the camera itself, which, as we've talked about, gear costs vary depending on what you're looking for. You can get some good deals on gear if you're careful, and we'll talk about that in another video. So let me know if there's other things you want me to talk about. I check the comments. I will do my best to address any questions, and I will see you soon. Bye.